Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our bi-weekly General Microsoft 365 Development Special Interest Group. Today is February the 4th, and we have a ton of great content for you. We do the usual updates on what's going on in our open source world, the PnP world. We'll have a picture time together mode. And then there is 3 demos. Kiran will show a Teams app template around Ask Away. Not sure what that will be, but looks interesting. Mika will talk about Microsoft Teams with Blazor. Kind of highly interested in that personally as well, because I've been playing with Blazor and building SDK that works with Blazor. So it's pretty cool to see how that will turn out. And then Sergey will have some SP formatter improvements and also really cool demo. So I think this is really a nice session today with 3 really cool demos. All right. The usual how to participate in a community. You've heard this before, but there might be new folks in here. So if you have an idea, if you want to show something, you build something really cool, you have a particular pattern that you created that you want to showcase, anything is kind of possible. Just reach out to us and we'll get you a spot in these bi-weekly calls where you can do a quick 50-minute demo. We slot them in 50 minutes. Contribute on GitHub if you fix things, find issue, log an issue, fix an issue with a PR. We also have discussions nowadays in most repos, so we can join in discussion and provide feedback or ask questions. All of that is contributing, and all of that will help us get a better community and grow together. So highly recommend it, just joining the community and doing those contributions. Content-wise, we have a lot of content. Massively a lot of content. We have 2 YouTube channels, one bit more focused on pure developer, the other one more broadly PnP, which covers also other scenarios, other things besides purely developer. We have our GitHub repos and the SharePoint org, the PnP org, Office Dev, and Microsoft Graph. Most things are in the PnP org nowadays, but the others contain also really cool things. We have sample galleries for web parse extensions, list formatting, and so on. And if you want to remember all of this, which is a lot, there's one address that you should remember, and that's ak.ms/m365pnp. It will lead you to a landing page where you find all the information about PnP, all the projects with the links to get more details and so on and so on. All right, who of you have watched the announcement like an hour ago? I hope some of you, I think so. There was questions already in the beginning of the meeting around Microsoft Viva. So Microsoft Viva was announced just today. We'll have sessions about it going forward in one of the next calls. But it is kind of a bundle of products, and it is, let's say for half of it is SharePoint oriented. It uses SharePoint as a base. And the extensibility story for Microsoft Viva is also SharePoint oriented, because you can use SharePoint Framework to extend for Microsoft Viva. So imagine one of the things in Viva is, for example, connections, where you see this, actually see in the screenshot, those little cards showing up here on the screen. These cards, these adaptive cards, you can create those using SharePoint Framework in the future. You can also kind of declaratively create them. Just put a page and put it in a card that will show up in connections. But there is ways to do kind of customize it, and more to come in the future with more details. Today you can't really extend it yet because that piece is not yet shipped, but will be soon. But it will happen in the future, and then we'll do more. We have our sample gallery for Microsoft Teams. ak.ms/teams-samples. Lots of good content if you want to start developing for Teams. So check it out. We have our Sharing is Caring initiative. David, are you on a call? Yeah, I see you.
I am. Yep.
All right. Take it away, David.
All right, thanks, Bert. All right, well, for those that are new to the community, it is valuable to know that as Patterns and Practices is inclusive and open source, so we welcome any and all initiatives and desires from the community to contribute back, as well as use the resources that we have available. But we also understand that there are sometimes hurdles involved with that, not only from the contributing perspective, but also from using some of the resources that are available. So Sharing is Caring is here to provide hands-on guidance in small, intimate little sessions where we provide you guidance on how to utilize the resources. Our team is growing. We've just added Emily Mancini and April Dunham has joined not too long ago. So we're going to be seeing a lot more sessions available covering the wide spectrum of topics. What is available now that is open for registration? First-time contributor, community docs, using SPFX samples with NVM and setting up your developer workstation. And then, of course, we've just started the Ask Me Anything series. That will be next week after the monthly call, 1 hour after the monthly call, and you can register for those today. We've also started an office hours initiative. So if you're just looking for a little one-on-one guidance, you've attended the sessions and you've got some very specific questions that you'd like to ask, you can go to aka.ms/sharingiscaring and look for the office hours and schedule just a 15 or 30-minute chat with a member of the Sharing is Caring team, and we'll help you get through all those. We want you to be part of the community, and so we look forward to seeing you at one of those sessions. Bert, back to you.
Thank you, David. Moving on. The updates on the PnP .NET libraries. So 2 weeks ago, we actually shipped our first GA release of PnP Framework. Just want to kind of repeat that again. If you're using a PnP score today, still there, but it's recommended to upgrade to PnP Framework, as that's the one that we move forward. That's the one that we'll update. PnP score will not get any updates anymore going forward. And there is like a migration guide. Essentially, it's quite easy to upgrade from PnP score to PnP Framework. What did we do in the PnP .NET world? For PnP Framework, a couple of bigger work items. One is we will enable page transformation from on-premises SharePoint pages. We had that with the monetization framework, but now that's integrated in PnP Framework. So with the next official release, you will be able to use PnP PowerShell, connect to on-prem SharePoint, and modernize a page from on-prem into online. Essentially translating, for example, a publishing page which lives in your on-prem portal into a modern page in a communication site in SharePoint Online. We did some work on port exhaustion fixes. Essentially, if you use too many HTTP clients in a cloud service at scale, you will get into trouble. We fixed that. I hope most of those issues are now gone, but if people still have an issue with that, let us know. Then there were some really good contributions from the community. Marcin created an offline CSOM testing framework. Quite technical, but have a look at it. It essentially allows you to kind of have an offline CSOM experience for testing, for mocking of data. Sebastian did an ACS update, making it thread safe, and some other improvements over there. And there's a ton of other fixes from folks like Erwin, Miguel, Christian, Giacomo, Gautam, and myself. Focus for PnP Framework will be just quality, and staying on top of the issue list and processing PRs and answering your questions. PnP Core SDK is the new library. PnP Framework is the evolution of PnP score. PnP Core SDK is a brand new library, which we are preparing for GA. Again, a number of contributions. Sebastian had some authentication improvements. Paul worked on the team side of the SDK. Paula did internal refactorings, and there's some fixes from Erwin and myself. We did some documentation updates and so on. So there, the plan is to still have a GA release in February. We initially wanted to release early February, but it will be more late February because we are doing some internal improvements to the library, which we want to get in. All right, PnP PowerShell, Erwin.
So we released 1.2.0, and actually very soon we probably will release 1.3 with some very exciting new features in there when it comes to auth. But I'll get back to that later. We already have 40,000 downloads. That's crazy. Actually, it goes really fast, and we see already that the new PowerShell, the new PnP PowerShell, is already used in over 2,000 tenants. It's really, really, really nice. So what will in the current nightly? So that is the cool thing of our new approach. We have nightly builds. You can already use something called the interactive login, and that is really nice and much better than the web login because it will allow you to acquire an access token behind the scenes. You don't see that happening, but it happens behind the scenes, and you get a full Azure AD OAuth type of connection to SharePoint. lot of technical talk here, but the result is basically that it is a much better way of authenticating towards your environment than it is what we did with use web login, because that one was limited to SharePoint. The interactive login allows you to go to SharePoint, to the graph, and without doing any new different connections or whatever, just with a single same connection. We changed the invoke PnP SB REST method commandlet. We changed behind the scenes to a different serialization engine, the one that is embedded in .NET Core. That one works a bit different. We fixed that now. Teams commandlets have been updated. You can actually now mark a team commandlet, a channel as visible for members. That's a setting you can do in the UI. You couldn't do that with the commandlet. Now you can set his favorite. And there is an update to set PnP list item, which now hopefully once and for all handles the setting author and editor fields, which is a bit of a tricky thing in CSUM, but we have fixed it in the set PnP list item. Ongoing, we're continuing to work with integrating in PnP Core SDK. Behind the scenes, we already do that. So for instance, all the modern page or page commandlets use the Core SDK behind the scenes. Some of the other commandlets use it depending on what you do with them. So we're already moving slowly, step by step, over to the Core SDK behind the scenes there. That's it, Bert.
Thank you, Erwin. Right, Yo Teams. Yo Teams latest update is a 3.00 preview 3 release with a ton of improvements again. So meaning if you're building Teams applications, this is another way to scaffold your project and get started. So not really much more details to share because I'm not so deep in this project, but it is really cool stuff. People have assured me that, so go check it out. Let's move to the Graph Toolkit. I think I saw Bet. So
yes. So for those of you who doesn't know what Microsoft Toolkit is, it's a collection of reusable and framework agnostic components and authentication providers for accessing and working with the graph. And there's very rich data behind the Microsoft Graph that a lot of the popular sets that we have components already working with. These components are fully functional right out of the box. So with built-in providers that authenticate with and fetch data from the graph, that makes your development super easy and add-on values that you have out of the box, look and feel from M365, and but it's also flexible that you can update it. So our latest updates still be 2.0.1, but we have preview releases that includes a lot of, better bug fixes and better samples. And we're introducing some of the new packages that's coming up. Next week, we'll have one of our team members, Amrita, coming on to do a demo on the new Electron authentication provider. We're also fixing some of the one of the most community complaints is that I can't use multiple web parts with MGT. And I think there's a new package for MGT SharePoint Framework that is also coming up. The PR is in review, and I would like to call out our community members who helped us made some of these updates available and still contributing to our repo.
Thank you, Bert.
Thank you.
Bob and Nicole.
Yes.
Yes, Bob.
Hi, everybody. So yeah, we have some cool continuing updates on the Microsoft Teams sample side. We have a brand new sample by Hilton Gieseneau, who actually has built 2 choices in this one for Teams proactive bot messaging. So 95% of bot examples out there, the bot reacts to the user's message. So there are some special tricks to making the bot begin a conversation, and could be sending a reminder or just getting back to a user about something that they might have requested a while ago. So Hilton shows how to do that in 2 languages, both in Node and .NET Core. And then we also get some significant updates to the documentation. I'm calling this one out because it's a really interesting sample. It's a Microsoft Teams meeting with a calling and meeting bot that literally initiates a call to you to bring you into the meeting. It's a really cool sample that shows a lot of new tech by Abtin and Arun. And need to get some feedback that the documentation, that some people were getting confused, and they did a great job updating that. So please go check that one out as well. And If you've done something cool or seen something cool or want to do something cool with Teams, please contribute. Please consider contributing it as a sample. There's instructions and, of course, the entire collection of samples at the URL on the screen. So thanks.
Thank you, Bob. Okay, last one before we dive into the demo is the optional picture time. So turn on your webcams and join the together mode. Oh, folks popping in. Great. So many people, so many. And you see that I look to a different side because my screen is now different, but good. I'm gonna take a screenshot. Here we go. That's that. All right, done. Let's move on. And our first demo from Kiran around the Ask Away Teams app template. Kiran, feel free to start sharing and show us the demo.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Kieran Thomas. I'm a program manager on the Teams platform team. I'm going to give you a demo of an upgrade that we're doing to one of our Teams app templates called Ask Away. And yeah, hopefully you'll like it and see what's possible within a Teams meeting. And this give you a little preview of what this is going to look like once it's released in a couple of weeks. With that, I'll give you first a little description of what Ask Away is. Ask Away is an app template that is available now that helps you conduct a Q&A session on Teams. So say one of your team members wants to do an Ask Me Anything session where anyone can ask them a question and they can give an answer in a very organized fashion. They can do it directly from Teams, and that's what Ask Away does. So before doing the demo, want to make sure you're aware of other app templates as well. App templates are low-code or simple solutions that we build and deploy or publish to GitHub. So you can take these and they're ready to use as an app on Teams. You can publish them. Some of them are available to publish on Azure. Some of them are Power App-based ones. They're simple to deploy. You just have to follow the steps on GitHub, and you can make these your own. So you can change the name, add new features to it, configure it, and use it as your own. And a little bit more of what the benefits are of doing these. These app templates are already published as full apps, so you don't need to do any coding to play with these and test them out. And like I mentioned earlier, you can customize it, change the icons, change the branding, make it your own. And these are built to be have all the privacy concepts in mind and securely deploy. And there's no need to make any changes once you get this rolled out to your Teams environment if you don't have the need for it. Cool. With that, let me give you a little preview of what Ask Away is. Like I mentioned, Ask Away is already live, and we're now working on adding some new additional features to it that makes it work in meetings. And that's what I'm going to focus my demo today. But in case, say, you work in a company and one of your managers or say vice presidents wants to do a session where any of his employees can ask questions, he can then host that. And another example of, or a few examples of things that a host or a moderator would want to do as part of a Q&A session is, be able to host either live during a Teams meeting like we have right now, or maybe they want to just post the questions and chat and do it asynchronously. Then you'd want to be able to see what the most popular questions are and things like that. And as an attendee, you want to ask questions, see what others are asking, and so on. With that, let's set up the scenario of what we're going to walk through today. So let's pretend that your organization is rolling out Teams and people have a lot of questions, and you want to be able to offer an avenue where they can come and ask questions and get all their questions answered. So with that, and jump into a Teams client. So I've set up a meeting, which is what you're looking at here. You can see this is the meeting pane within my Teams desktop. I've already put in all the details. I've invited Vesa to it. Because I expect a lot of attendees to be part of this meeting and only I want to be the presenter, or I want to control that, the first thing I'm going to do is go into this more options section, which will open up the meeting options. And what I'm going to do is make sure that it's set to who can present, only me. Now, if I didn't mind everyone being able to create new sessions or ask questions, that would be fine, but I expect hundreds of people to join, and so I'm going to select only me. And this allows me to control what kind of functionality Ask Away will enable for different users. So I click save, everything looks good. Let's go back to my meeting here. And now up top, you can see there's a tab option. I've already added Ask Away, but I'll show you what it would be like to add it from the start. If I hit that plus button, it gives me options for what kind of tabs I can add to my meeting. And Ask Away is meetings capable app. So I'll just close out of this and jump into my tab, which I've already opened. And you can see this is the default view before a meeting starts for Ask Away. So the few options you have is you can click this button to start a new session. If you have had multiple sessions in the past, you can click this button to do that. In this case, let's kick off a new session. And let's call it Ask Anything about Teams transition. Give it a nice little description to help people and prompt people to ask questions. Once you do that, it'll refresh and give you a success message. Yay, so now our Ask Away session is live. People can start ask questions, and they can do it either via the chat or the meeting. Let's take a look at how to do that. So this is the tab view where you can ask a question. Let's see, how do I start a call? Do something simple like that and post this question here. And that question gets posted, so you can see it here within the tab of a meeting. Now let's pretend that I'm going to join the meeting. I've already got it going, so let's switch over. So you can see here, this is the meeting view where people can join like we are in our current meeting. And when I started the session, it gave me a notification saying, you know, this person has started the session. Here's the title of the session. And what I can do is open the meeting pane. So what I'm going to do is dismiss this and click the Ask Away icon up top, which is where I can view and interact with the questions and sessions within the meeting. So once I click that, it should hopefully load. There it goes. You can see the details of it, and I can now start interacting with the app and ask questions directly from the meeting pane. You can see the title of it, which questions have already been asked, what are the pending questions. Let's ask another question here directly from the pane. And once you do that, this also shows up here. I can upvote it. I can't upvote my own questions, so that's why I can't demo that now, but anyone else would be able to do that. And now that, because I'm a moderator and have the presenter access, I can have this view where I can see the check mark, which what it does is it'll mark it as answered. So once I've answered one of these questions, I can check that and it'll get moved to a different section. If I wasn't a presenter, this button would not be enabled for me. So let's click that. What that should do is it'll disappear from this pending question section, and it'll show up in this other section here, which under answered questions. And not only within the meeting itself, but if I switch back and go into the chat, you can see how I can interact with this as a card as well. So a card got posted, the chat, that helps users who want to interact with it or maybe ask questions before the meeting starts. They can do that here. You have the same kind of functionality where you can see upvotes, you can click on and upvote questions, you can ask new questions. Same kind of capabilities are available there as well. So for example, if I click on that, it shows me what my own questions were, what all the others' questions are. And once I'm done with the entire Ask Away session, because I am, again, the person who started it and I have the presenter access, I can click the end session button to say, okay, we're done with the question answer session. We are not planning to gather any more questions, and this will now be ended. So what this does is it ends the session across all of it, and oops, run into a error. Pardon me, but yeah, pretend that this ended the session and this question would disappear. Kind of like here, oh, there we go. We have one that successfully ended. and you wouldn't be able to ask any questions. You can view past questions. So hopefully that gives you an idea. One other feature that I want to quickly flash for you is what it looks like when there's lots of questions, which I don't have the time for. So you can clearly see within the tab which are the answered questions, which are the pending questions, and it tags it, and you can see the upvotes. And say you have you want to look at the questions that were asked in a past session, you can click this button, which will then open up a module that gives you a lot of other sessions that you can switch to. If you click one of those, it'll open up that session, and you can see that one is closed, but you can still view how many votes it got, which ones were answered, which ones were pending. So hopefully this gives you a good idea of what you can do with hosting a Q&A session directly within a Teams meeting, and how easy it is to do it, and how you can make it much easier for your host and moderator to do it. And just to reiterate some things that are common across app templates, these apps are easy to deploy, and you don't need to be an experienced developer to do this. If you have access to your Azure environment as an admin with admin rights, and you know how to read through and do basic scripting and things like that, you can deploy it yourself. And they don't cost anything. They're open source. Other than the cost of running the Azure resources, there's no cost to use or operate these. So you can completely make this your own app. And with that, that's the end of my demo. Thank you all. I'll keep an eye on the chat to see if you have any questions. But otherwise, thanks for listening in.
Thank you, Kiran. Another really useful Teams app template. So there's so many of these, and they're all just very good and useful. So thanks for sharing this one. I think it's now time for building another Teams app, but this time with Blazor. Mika, feel free to take it away, start sharing and show us.
All right, thank you. I'll just set up things here a bit, or I guess I'll start my desktop sharing first. I'll go through this thing with a couple of slides first in just a couple of minutes, and then I go to the demo. I've timed it, and I can do it in less than 9 minutes. So a couple of minutes with slides, and then 9 minutes of demo, and then we have a bit of a buffer there.
Yeah, 50 minutes, so no worries.
All right. So building Microsoft Teams apps with Blazor. First, a few things about what is Blazor. Well, that is a framework for single-page applications, and it is these days it is a part of ASP.NET Core, so it is kind of central part of ASP.NET Core. It uses Razor syntax and Razor components to build UI. It doesn't need any kind of plugins. It works just on web standards and works with any modern browser without any additions or any plugins required, and also mobile browsers. The thing with Blazor is that you write your UI code or your code you write in C# instead of JavaScript, or well, you could probably use any .NET language, but you don't write it in JavaScript, you use C#. And what that brings also, which is quite interesting, is that you can actually then use any more or less any .NET standard library in your application. So for instance, Microsoft Graph client and Azure Cosmos DB SDK and stuff like that. And what makes it different from, well, React and Angular and Vue and these kinds of frameworks is that, well, what I think is just, it's not just another JavaScript framework. It is thinking, well, if you would, outside of the box a bit. So doing things a bit differently. There are two flavors of Blazor, or actually hosting models. So you have Blazor Server, which has an ASP.NET Core backend, and all of your code runs on the server. And the changes in the UI, or the UI is rendered on the server, and the changes in the UI is sent to the client over a SignalR connection, and then the client bits of Blazor will then take care of updating the UI. And then you have something that is called Blazor WebAssembly, which has no backend and is actually all of your application is running in the client. You can host such an application on any web server that is capable of hosting static HTML files. So for instance, Azure Storage or Azure static websites and GitHub pages and whatnot. And how it works is that it is a mono-based .NET runtime that is loaded into the browser and running actually inside of the browser. And that then loads all of your DLLs or your application DLLs into that runtime, and then it runs in the browser, just like in a sandbox where your JavaScript is running. So you can't get to the local file system or do stuff that you can't otherwise do in a browser application. And if you do HTTP requests, you will have to comply to course rules and stuff like that. So it is running in a sandbox, but still it is your .NET code running in the browser. So then building Teams apps with Blazor, there are a few challenges, or one major what I think actually is that since your Blazor application, you are writing it in C# or .NET language, and Teams SDK is JavaScript only SDK. So you have to do some interop there, and JavaScript interop in Blazor, well, it is quite easy, but it can also be quite tricky, and especially if you have a lot of callbacks and promises and stuff like that in the JavaScript code, then it becomes really tricky. Another thing that in Teams applications, which applies to all kinds of Teams applications, is that Teams does not actually do the authentication of your user. It provides you with information about who the user is. It is not authentication, so you have to take care of the authentication properly. So there's a lot of boilerplate code that you have to write to get things to get things set up, and that's what I set out on during the Christmas holidays to do something about that, and I wrote a component library that takes care of most of this boilerplate code. So writing Teams apps with Blazor becomes really easy. And I have a demo where I'll show you how to write a simple personal tab application. That is those applications that you get on the left-hand side in the apps bar. But then writing channel applications or meeting applications, it's just the same principles that you follow. It's a bit different, but still pretty much the same from an application perspective. Then there's a couple of links here on the last slide. I already sent this slide deck to Vesa, so you'll be getting these links as well. And so now I will start the demo actually. I have created a blog article on my blog, which is actually the script for this demo. So and this link the link to this article is in the slide deck. So you can follow this script as well and do the same what I'm showing you now in this demo, and I'll be copy pasting the code from that script. So we'll start off with creating a new Blazor application, and then let's call it. That is something that I haven't yet have done. I've practiced this a couple of times. So we'll do a Blazor server application using .NET 5 and just a standard configuration with HTTP. And then let's create that. All right, so now we have the Blazor application created. So the first thing that I'm going to do is that I will register the application in Azure AD. I have already registered this here in Azure AD, but I'll just go through the registration in general. So this is just a standard Azure AD application registration, where if we look at the authentication, I'm using the single page application platform with specifying the root URL to the application, which I'll be running locally in Visual Studio. There's nothing special to this. There's just a standard single tenant application and so just a normal application registration. The API permissions I've granted with or used admin consent so that the users don't have to consent to this permission, delegated permissions separately. So it's just a bit easier for them. But otherwise, this is just a standard application. Next thing what I'm going to do is then we'll configure that information in my application settings file. I'll just copy this from the blog post and then type in the right information, and I need to copy the client ID because that I don't know from top of my head, like that. Then I will add a reference to the library. It is available on NuGet. It's called Blazor Teams. And it's also available open source on GitHub. And so I'll install that. Now it's installed, and then I can close this up. I'll save that, close, and then I'll take the imports file and do some additions to that one so that we get easier. It's easier to reference the components. Close that up. The next thing what I'll be doing is that I'll do the configuration. This is just, as you know, this is just standard configuration that you do in ASP.NET Core application. So I'll copy that and add the configuration here. So now I'm using from my application settings the Teams app section and the client ID and tenant ID, and just letting the Blazor Teams know that this is the stuff that it can use to actually do the authentication of the user. Then I will create one page in the application, and this is the personal tab page or the page that represents the personal tab app, and just call it personal, like that. And then I will copy the code that I have on the blog here. Okay, now I'll just explain a few bits here. So here's the normal routing that is used in Blazor applications, but then this Teams application component is part of Blazor Teams that actually does a lot of stuff for you. So it takes care of all of the communications with the Teams SDK. So that means initializing the application and letting Teams SDK know that your application has loaded successfully, and getting the context for the application and all kinds of stuff. And also, since I have specified that this application requires authentication, it will also do the authentication using Microsoft Authentication Library. What it will be then doing is provide me with the access token that I can then use for the permissions that I granted access to in the application registration. So with that access token, I could then read the profile information for the user who has logged in. And when all of that stuff has been done by the Teams application, it will render this application template and provide that information for me in the context. So we have the context from Teams that contains information about about the context in which the application is running. So if it is a channel application, you get the channel ID, the group ID, and stuff like that, and a lot of things that is provided you by Teams SDK in the client. And that is JavaScript natively, but with Teams Blazor Teams, it is translated over to .NET, so you don't have to do any .NET or JavaScript coding. And it also provides you then with the access token that you can use to access Microsoft Graph. Then I'll just switch over to using the or away from IIXpress and then hit F5 to just try that it actually compiles and works. So the first time it takes a bit to compile the entire application. And here we have it. This is just the standard Blazor application, and that's fine, but now it's compiled correctly. All right, so then it is time to go to Teams and do the actual manifest of that application. So here the App Studio is an application, a Teams application that you can use to easily create manifest for your applications. And I have already one application that I've created here ahead of time. So, but we'll just take a look at that. So the application manifest, it requires a short name of the application, an app ID, package name, version, and descriptions, your company name, website, and the privacy URL and terms of use URL. That is, and then you can specify icons and stuff like that. But this is what is required to have in the application. What we'll do is that we have a tab that we want to have in this application. So we go to the tab section, and in the team tab, here's where you would add tabs that you install into channels or meetings or group chats. But since we're doing just a personal tab, we use this personal tab section. So here you can add a new personal tab. I already created one, so we'll just have a look at that, how it looks. So the name of that, then a unique identifier for that tab, I'll just use the same. Here's the URL that of the page that we just created in Visual Studio. And so when you launch the application, it will load that URL. And that's pretty much it, what you need to have in the application. You can have a look at the app manifest. It looks like this. And then on the last page here, you can either download it or install it directly if you have enabled what they call side loading of Teams apps in your tenant. So you need to enable custom applications in your tenant, but you can do that probably in a development tenant, no problem with that. Otherwise, you need to download the manifest and ask an admin to publish it for you. But what we'll do now is just go ahead and install that, add it, and it will come here as an icon. And now when it runs, it will not run because I haven't started the application in Visual Studio. But now again, run it. And when it's loaded, we can go back to the Teams client, which is over here, I guess. Yes. And now when I refresh that, it will load. And here is the information that is coming from Teams context and all of the authentication results with my access tokens and a list of scopes that is included and so on.
Great.
Yeah.
So then people can just use the access token and start calling other APIs using Graph, or calling into SharePoint and so on.
Yes.
And so on. Yeah. Really cool, and I really like how you kind of made it easy to handle the Teams SDK and kind of do all the plumbing essentially, making it super simple for folks to use this.
Yeah.
Now, for time's sake, I want to switch to Sergey to give him his 50 minutes.
Sure.
Sergey.
Yeah.
So thanks, Mika. Great demo. I love it.
No problem.
Sergey, feel free to start sharing and show us something more around column formatting.
Yeah, thank you. Hello, everyone, and my name is Sergey Sergeyev. I'm from Belarus, Minsk. I'm SharePoint and Microsoft 365 developer and consultant. Love development, GitHub, and all this stuff, you name it. And this demo is about SP Formatter. If you don't know what is SP Formatter, then at the very beginning, I will show and explain what it is and how it works. and then I will demonstrate some new features and improvements which were added at the end of 2020. And also you will see the difference between out-of-the-box formatting experience, because out-of-the-box experience was also updated recently. So let's get started. First of all, what is SP Formatter? SP Formatter is Google Chrome and Microsoft Edge, Chromium Edge extension. So you can search and grab it from corresponding store. Then you have it available on your browser, and then you should click on this small icon. And if you want to use it, you should enable this extension for this particular tab. So currently this extension SP Formatter is enabled for this tab only. Now you should go to your column, then select format this column, and you see this little toggle here. So by clicking, you can enable an enhanced version of your column formatting. And what is the difference? First of all, for example, you can change something here, and you see that you see a live preview of what you type. It is reflected immediately in your list view. So this is SP Formatter, and probably you have noticed it that out-of-the-box experience here and the SP Formatter experience, they look very similar. And that's right, because out-of-the-box was updated just a few weeks ago, and currently it uses exactly the same user interface element called Monaco Editor. That's the same element used by Visual Studio Code internally. And it supports these highlights, it supports schema IntelliSense and suggestions. You can fold, unfold, etc. So all this cool stuff now is out of the box. And the question is, what is the difference between SP Formatter, what SP Formatter provides, which additional functionality, etc. So let's see it. Something I've already shown, so it's a live preview feature. So as you type, it changes the presentation here. Then additionally, in SP Formatter mode, for example, if we are under the styles tag, then we have IntelliSense for styles as well. So you can type different style properties, and you have suggestions. You have some helper tooltips available as well. Then if you go to icon name and then change, or if you want to use another icon, then again we have IntelliSense for icons, so we can easily switch icon. And then if we go here under text content, for example, and change it to be an expression like this, then if you type add symbol, then we have also additional IntelliSense or suggestions for something called replaceable tokens. For example, here I can use my login name, or I can use row index, so it changes dynamically. And then additionally, probably you know that you can also use field values inside your column formatting. So if you type $, then it suggests you the list of fields available for currently selected list. So it's context aware. For example, I can type amount, then it shows me the value for amount field. If I type, let's say, drinks, then it shows me the value of drinks column. Okay, then also this area, you see this area is quite small. That is why in enhanced mode, you have this small icon which uses all available space, and you still have an option to change the width as you wish. And you have full screen, which is convenient if you have a lot of lines in your JSON formatting. Yeah, so that's the main differences between out-of-the-box formatting. So here, for example, if you try to see the suggestions for styles, you don't have anything except these content-based suggestions, which is not right, you don't have icon name, you don't have these add suggestions as well. Then the last and probably the most exciting feature that was added recently is VS Code integration mode. And it will be useful mostly for developers or for people who have their own, or who have their JSON formatting files under source control system, for example, Git repository. Because normally if you want to change your JSON, then you open your JSON file here, then you copy, paste here, then you change something, and then paste back to Visual Studio Code, which is not very convenient. Now you can use VS Code integration mode. So how it works? First of all, for VS Code, you should install the SP Formatter extension. So it has exactly the same name, SP Formatter. I have it installed. Now simply open your, okay, let me actually move it like this. And then this guy, yeah, like this. Then simply open your JSON formatting file, right-click, and select Start a New Session. SP Formatter, Start a New Session. Now we have in the status bar in the bottom, you see this, the mode is listening. Now if you go here to our browser, so currently I am changing the flow column formatting. Let me move it like this. If I enable enhanced formatting, then you see that it says that VS Code is connected, and we have this file name listed here. And now you can guess what will happen next. Then when I change anything in VS Code, then and all these changes are reflected immediately again in my browser. Moreover, in VS Code, the full IntelliSense, exactly the same level of IntelliSense as available here. It is also available in VS Code, so I can type add symbol and then let's say a current web, so it displays the URL. I can type row index, etc. So we see it works. And again, if I type $, then it inserts the placeholder for field value. Also, these things, they are context aware. So if I go to another list, for example, then of course the list of fields here in this suggestion will be completely different. Now, if you want to modify another column, then simply let's say drinks. So simply open drinks JSON, right click, then select start a new session. The previous session will be closed automatically. Then select the right column here, drinks, then disable and enable it again so that it's reinitialized. And now we are ready to modify our drinks JSON like this. In order this rich IntelliSense to work in Visual Studio Code, you should follow two simple rules. Now, the first rule is that your JSON formatting, you should delete schema property from your JSON formatting, because otherwise Visual Studio Code will try to suggest you different values based on the schema property. So if you remove them, the schema will come from extension, from SP formatter extension. And the second rule is that your file should follow some naming conventions. For example, here I have all my files using column dash format ending. Basically, you can use any of these patterns, column, dash, or dot, then formatter, or just format. So if you follow these rules, then you have full IntelliSense in VS Code as well. And just a few words on how it works under the hood. Under the hood, Visual Studio Code extension starts a new web server when you click Start a New Session, which supports WebSockets using socket.io. And then web extension here tries to connect to open web server. And if it is successful, then the connection is established. And then Visual Studio Code simply transfers JSON to the browser. So basically, this is it from my side. Thank you very much.
This is just super impressive, Sergey. It's mind-blowing what you did today. Really cool stuff. This is actually how Microsoft should have done it, maybe, but you kind of just brought it to a new level. So really great, awesome stuff. So we're at the hour almost, 1 minute. So thanks everyone. Great demos today. Now our next meetings are on the 18th. There will be a next general development call, and next week it's again our SharePoint Framework call on February the 11th. And as usual, video will be out in around 24 hours on our PnP YouTube channel. So with that, want to highlight some other community calls that there are for Graph, depth of cards, Power Apps, and so on. So the whole series, you can find the links here. If you're interested in those, please subscribe and join those calls. It's always something great to learn. And with that, I think we can wrap up right at the hour. Thanks, everyone. Hope to see you next time again. Bye-bye.